On my 60th birthday, my son said, "No gifts," then flew to Paris with his mother-in-law. I quietly handed over all my assets to the child who never once called me mom. That morning, the sun was gentle. Its golden rays filtered through the thin veil of late autumn mist. I woke up early, tidied the house, straightened the tablecloth, and wiped the dust off the family photo frame. I even went to the garden to pick the last sprigs of lavender, placing them in a small ceramic vase at the center of the dining table. Their soft scent drifted into the kitchen, blending with the aroma of fresh bread I had baked, as if everything was ready, waiting for something. I wore a pale pink sweater, the one I had on at my son's wedding. I wanted to look nice today, even if it was just to celebrate my 60th birthday, a milestone they say is like growing up all over again. I thought maybe the kids would drop by. Nothing fancy. Just a small cake, a cheap bouquet from the corner market, or simply a hug. I would have been happy. I cooked his favorite beef stew from childhood, set the table with 2 extra chairs, left the door open. All morning, I checked the clock countless times. All afternoon, I didn't dare eat, afraid guests might come and find the house messy. By evening, the sunlight slanted through the window, casting a long beam across the empty room. The wall clock ticked dryly, each sound echoing clearly, as if counting down to something quietly breaking. At 5:17 p.m., the phone vibrated. It was my son. I picked up, still hopeful, my voice trembling with joy. "Hello? Mom's here," he said. "Mom, there won't be a birthday gift this year. My wife wants to cut expenses for some big plans. You understand, right?" I stood frozen. Only the wind outside tapped gently on the old wooden door. I looked out to the yard, where I once took his first college photo. Now only a few dry leaves swirled in the breeze. I whispered, "Yes, Mom understands." He hung up quickly, as if afraid to hear one more word. A minute later, I saw a photo just posted online. The two of them, with his mother-in-law, sitting in a fancy restaurant in Paris. Below the photo was the caption, "Family, everything." I slowly pulled my hand back from the table and blew out the candle on the supermarket discount cake I bought myself. The flame vanished, leaving a faint trail of smoke in the empty kitchen. This year, I turned 60, and I realized some birthdays don't need more years, just fewer hopes. I remember the first time I held him in my arms after bringing him home from the hospital. A tiny red-faced baby, crying softly as if afraid to bother his mother. Back then, my husband was still alive, though his health was already failing. He passed away when our son was just 3. From then on, the house had only the two of us, and I, once just a woman who could sew, became everything a family needed. By day, I worked as a cleaner at a small hotel. At night, I washed dishes at a Mexican diner, 10 minutes from home. On snowy days, my hands would go numb from the cold water, yet I stayed until the last dish was done, just to earn a few extra dollars in tips. I never went on vacation, never shopped for myself. Every dollar I saved had my son's name on it. I noted down every expense in an old notebook: 5th grade tuition, new shoes in 8th grade, college entrance exam fees, the deposit for his first apartment after graduation. While friends posted cruise photos, I sat in my kitchen corner, gluing the broken strap of an old sandal with super glue. But I never felt poor, because every time I saw my son studying well, growing up healthy and kind, I felt my life was worth it. I once told a friend, if my son becomes successful, I could die content. And I meant it, truly. When he fell in love with a girl from a well-off family, I was the first to support him. I had nothing but gratitude for life, for letting him find happiness. I emptied my savings to help pay for the wedding, just the way her family wanted. A beach ceremony, a professional film crew, a custom wedding gown from New York. At the wedding, I wore an old outfit from my cousin's wedding. I wasn't embarrassed. I was just happy to see my son glowing with joy. I thought, maybe now I could stop pushing myself so hard. He's grown. Maybe now I could step back and finally be someone who is loved. But I was wrong. What I got in return was just a birthday phone call telling me there would be no gift this year due to budget cuts. I don't blame him for not buying a gift. I only blame myself for hoping. After the wedding, I began to feel myself quietly stepping out of my son's life, not by harsh words or rejection, but through small distances, growing longer, growing colder. He stopped calling as often. My messages were answered only with emojis or rushed replies. I told myself, they're newlyweds, surely they have a lot on their plate. Even though I felt a pang of emptiness inside, I tried to understand. I didn't blame him. One time, I was invited over for dinner at their place. I had prepared early, picked out my nicest outfit, and even packed a small bag of fruit to bring along. I just wanted to contribute something, not to show off, but to feel like I was still part of the family meal. But when I arrived, the atmosphere had changed. His mother-in-law sat at the center of the table, chatting lively with the two of them. I felt more like a passing guest than the mother who had raised that son for decades. No one asked if I had eaten. No one asked how I was doing. I just sat there, listening to them talk about investment plans, upcoming trips to Europe, and luxury furniture brands I'd never even heard of. I didn't belong in those conversations. I stayed silent, smiled when appropriate, and washed the dishes afterward, as if it were a nameless habit. No one stopped me, but no one thanked me either. After that night, I was never invited again. On my son's birthday the following year, I called and asked, "Are you planning to celebrate?" He said they'd do something at his in-laws' place, more convenient that way. I nodded, said, "Okay," and hung up before my voice could tremble. I'm not a sensitive person, but sometimes coldness doesn't need words. It's etched too clearly in every small action. I understand now. In my son's new life, I've become a part that's rarely mentioned, or best left unseen. I have no education, no wealth, no way to speak the language of the world they live in. I'm just the one who once worked 2 jobs so he could go to college, the one who skipped meals to buy him his first suit for a job interview. And now I'm the one sitting on the sidelines of the dinner table of my own child. But I still don't blame him. I just grew quiet. Back when I lived in the old neighborhood, next door to me was a single-parent household, an elderly grandmother and her grandson. The boy often sat silently on the front steps, his eyes carrying a weight far heavier than his 10 years. I don't remember when it started, but each evening, I'd leave an extra portion of food on the windowsill. On cold days, I'd add a cup of warm milk. I never needed a thank you. Just the sight of the cleaned plate, returned the next morning, was enough to know he'd made it through another day. He grew up without anyone formally teaching him manners, yet he was always respectful toward me. When I came home late from work, he'd wheel my bike in. When the awning leaked, he climbed up to fix it. When I slipped and sprained my ankle in the kitchen, he was the first to knock on my door and take me to the clinic. I never considered him my child. But somehow, without realizing it, he had become the closest person to me in the world. On the night of my 60th birthday, after that call from my son and blowing out the candle alone, I cleared the table and was getting ready for bed when I heard a knock at the door. He stood there, holding a bag of steaming hot food and a clumsily bundled bouquet of wildflowers tied with a rubber band. He didn't say much, just looked at me and asked, "Have you had dinner yet, Auntie?" I nodded, but still set out another bowl and pair of chopsticks. It was the warmest meal I'd had in years, not because the food was particularly good, but because, for once, I didn't have to pretend to be strong in front of anyone. From that night on, he came more often. When my back hurt, he bought medicine. When winter came, he installed a heater in my room. He never called me Mom, not once, but everything he did was thoughtful and complete, like a real son would do. I began spending more time at his place, a small apartment, but tidy and cozy. Not fancy, not modern, but it had a place for my slippers, a hook for my coat, and a teacup that was always filled with hot water each night. Gradually, I stopped remembering the last time my biological son had called, and eventually, I stopped hoping. One weekend afternoon, I returned to my old house. For the first time, it felt foreign to me. Everything was still in place, yet somehow, I no longer belonged there. I opened the safe, took out all the documents, savings books, house deed, insurance papers, and carefully placed them into a single bag. The next day, I went to a lawyer's office and asked to change my entire will. My new heir doesn't share my surname. We are not related by blood. But he was there at the exact moment I needed someone the most. He never asked for anything. But I know, if one day I'm no longer here, he wouldn't let me be forgotten. I didn't do this out of anger. I did it because it's time to choose who will truly stand by me, not on a birth certificate, but in the life I still have left to live. I don't know how my son found out. Maybe someone told him. Or maybe he discovered the new heir's name in the asset transfer records. But one February morning, the phone rang nonstop, and when I opened the door, he was already standing there. I didn't recognize that look in his eyes anymore. The son I once raised was no longer in the man before me. His face had gone pale, hands trembling, lips repeating the same old words. I was wrong. Mom, please forgive me. Don't do this. I stayed silent, not out of anger, but because there was simply nothing left to say. He knelt down, crying like a child. He told me his wife had left, that work was falling apart, that he always thought I'd be there, always, so he never felt the need to hold on to me. I looked at him, my heart as empty as a house, stripped of memories. I didn't hate him. I didn't resent him. I just knew I had come too far to return to the path we once shared. Some wounds need no knife, and still cut deep enough never to heal. I didn't blame him for choosing his mother-in-law over me at those family dinners. I didn't hold it against him for forgetting birthdays or disappearing during holidays. I only regret that he was the one who taught me this truth. Love, if it only flows one way, will eventually run dry. I told him everything had been arranged. I would not change it. I needed nothing from him anymore and would leave nothing to him later. My assets, my life, my remaining years now belonged to someone who cherished me while I was still here. He cried a lot, but this time I didn't wipe his tears like I used to. When he left, I watched him through the crack in the door. No goodbye, no promise to return. I knew that was the last time. And for the first time, I didn't feel regret. I walked back inside and poured myself a cup of hot tea. In the kitchen, the other son, the one not born of me, was preparing lunch and called out, "Mom, do you want noodles or rice today?" I answered softly, "Noodles are fine, son." And I smiled, because not everyone who calls you mom is truly your child. But sometimes, the ones who don't are.